All right. Good evening, folks. I think we have the panelists with us. Jyothish, Vishnu, if you can turn on your video as well.
Hi, Prathyush.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, everybody.
Just doing some hygiene checks. I think we should be good to start in just a minute. All right, I think it's 5:01. Let's get started right on time. So firstly, hello, everyone. Welcome to this panel discussion on technology, the then, the now, and the future. And this is the first in a series of panel discussions from ISB and PGPMAX, where we invite industry leaders to speak to us about important topics and provide insights on what the future holds and help us leaders plan for it. My name is Prathyush. I'm a principal product manager at Microsoft, and I'm part of the current PGPMAX cohort. We were supposed to pass out in 2021, but because of the pandemic, we have a couple of terms left, and I'll be moderating the session today. Today, we have three amazing leaders from the technology space, but with very different areas of expertise. All three of them are PGPMAX alums, and it's a privilege to have them with us in this panel discussion. Firstly, we have Afroz. She's from the founding batch of PGPMAX. Then Vishnu Kanth Tummala from PGPMAX batch of 2018, and Jyothish Cherian from PGPMAX batch of 2019. Over to you folks for a quick round of introductions.
Cool. I can go first because I get to do that, right? Because I'm from the founding class. So hi folks, as Prathyush mentioned, I'm Meher. I am an engineering leader in cloud and AI in Microsoft, and of course, proud alum of PGPMAX.
Hi, yeah, I can go next. Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm a PGPMAX 2018 cohort. So and work in Hitachi Vantara with 25 years of experience in IT infrastructure. Folks.
Hi, my name is Jyothish, and I've got 20+ years of experience in the IT industry. Currently working with Wells Fargo, but I've been working with different companies like GE and Deloitte Consulting.
Awesome, thank you. So let us talk about the agenda for today. So as you all know, technology has been an enabler for business transformation. And over the past decade, we have seen rapid changes in nearly every industry vertical. Today, we'll talk about some of these key trends in technology. What are the challenges being faced by industry leaders? What to expect in the future and how leaders should prepare accordingly. Thank you for everyone who joined, who registered and posted questions. So I'll be bringing up some of these questions during the discussion. And we will also try to have some time for Q&A towards the end. And we have Smriti here with us from ISB. And if you have any questions about PGPMAX, the program, the admission process, etc., you can hang back and we'll take these up towards the end. Right, so I think we can get started with the first question. This is to you, Jyothish. When we talk about technology, right, one of the first things that come up is data. Data is ubiquitous. It's growing in need and in scale. So how do you see data transforming business in different industries?
Yeah. So let me start with the typical cliche, right? They say data is the new oil, data is the new gold, right? And all of you must have heard of it. There's no second thoughts on that. And then I would like to say that today is the day one of big data, right? The journey has just started. The next 50 years is going to be amazing. We're going to do a lot of things with data. I can tell you because last 10 years I've been in data and worked with different companies like GE, Wells Fargo. I've seen how they use big data. And what is big data, right? Big data is when you have tons of data, and how do you capture all this data and make sense out of this data, right? How do you analyze all this data? And then you see in all these different industries, using this data in different ways, right? They could use it for prediction behavior. They could use it for tracking trends, fraud detection. If you are in the banking space, you cross-sell products, upsell products. You take customer feedback, you act on it near real time, you do sentiment analysis, you are able to retain customers. You do a lot of magic with this data, right? Like I always like to say, right, the data is going to be used in such a way that so far we know the past, we know the present, and after some time, we will be able to predict the future, right? And I'm sure Meher is going to touch upon some of those predicting the future using AI ML. We can't hear you, Prathyush. You're on mute.
You are in mute, Prathyush.
Basic hygiene check. I apologize. So yeah, that's a great point. So one of the key technologies which you talked about, right, which emerged over the past decade is AI ML. Now, what do we do with all this data is we are able to build fantastic models on top of it. But from a real world point of view, Meher, probably this is something you can answer. What are the real world applications of AI ML today? And what sort of impact is our businesses able to get from this?
Sure, thanks, Prathyush. So I would say, see, AI is increasingly at the heart of business transformation. And it's really changing how organizations make decisions, how they develop better products, services, and customer experience. But what is AI? Simplistically, it is nothing but, the science and engineering of making an intelligent machine, or in particular, intelligent computer program. See, while the term AI was coined, in the early 50s, AI has since advanced by leaps and bounds, thanks to the advanced algorithms, the increased data volumes, and improvements in computer power and technology. And transformation via AI can range from transforming a critical business process to transforming your engagement with customers and employees using digital agents, and to building intelligent applications that leverage AI to create future business models. See, they can take the form of bot services or conversational AI, cognitive services like vision, speech, language, knowledge, search, and machine learning for creating AI models. Now, based on the dollars spent, the two largest use cases, or two or the three of the largest use cases, are automated customer service agents and sales process recommendation followed by automation. Other scenarios also include, fraud detection, threat intelligence, program advisors and recommendations. Now, let me try to bring it home with few examples. And, I'm sure several of you are already familiar with this, and perhaps are already using it without, realizing. So, you must have used, the ride-hailing services like Uber, Ola, and we know that, they use real-time traffic and GPS data and map AI APIs to forecast expected arrival time. See, they use machine learning to do route optimization. Your food ordering apps then again also leverage AI to do a lot of prediction of delivery times and recommending food options. And some of them actually would not even exist if data and AI wasn't there, right? So these models wouldn't have even come to life. Other simpler examples that you're perhaps using, you might be using AI to complete your emails. You might be using AI to code. You are also using, in some cases, AIs for machine translation. You're using, like for instance, something like this. We could always use AI to translate into any language that we feel comfortable with. Right. So, AI is gradually, it's not yet, I would say, ubiquitous, but I'm sure it's on a path to that. And we can use AI to teach our machines to do some things that are repeatable, right? So like, for instance, we have examples where customers have taken something that, their employees already knew how to do well. They've used that knowledge to train AI models, and then those AI models are able to do things faster. But they're also, these AI models are also able to flag issues in real time, so that then the engineers can intervene and actually, do the higher end work. We have examples of, simple examples like, invoices, right? I mean, you process so many invoices, and then, you could almost automate that part, right? Where your the payment itself can be automated, and the machine the algorithm can alert you for anomalies, and that's when a human can get involved. And in the pandemic, right? I mean, there are examples of how assessment tools using AI for health have actually been super helpful in taking the load away from our doctors, right? So that they can then focus on the more critical cases. So as you see, the AI is helping organizations just learn and make decisions, but it is also playing a key role in the current scenario in not just navigating the present, right, which is the now, but also kind of helping them reboot and reinvent their businesses for the future.
Thanks, Meher. So a couple of very key insights I'm hearing is you talked about multiple verticals here, not just AI being restricted to one or two business verticals, but literally, I think you gave examples of literally every other space. And organizations, if they want to bring AI into their core business process, they have to go through a lot of transformation, because it is, from what you are saying, it really affects their daily business, right? So a follow-up question I'd love to understand is, now, if you want to bring in such a change into the organization, their existing business process, now there's a lot of transformation that's needed. There's a lot of digitalization that's needed. So Vishnu, this question is to you is, now what sort of challenges should organizations be ready to face, right, with respect to their infrastructure or with respect to security point of view?
Yeah, so the pace of adoption of technology in the enterprise, right, is very rapid. Last few years, and then it's actually as from enabling function to it became pervasive and then ubiquitous everywhere, right? And this actually increases our digital assets exponentially, and each digital asset gets connected to the network and interconnected by various means and ways, and each of those interconnects can any of the small weak link in the entire interconnected network. So that can be an entry point for breach or breach, right? I think it's becoming very challenging, and a lot of these technologies are evolving. Some of them are matured, some of them are still evolving, and various phases of maturity. So as an enterprise, right, so we need to focus on improving the awareness of cyber as a knowledge and skill. Okay, what as a user I need to be doing with respect to cyber, as a product owner. So what is my responsibilities? As a business leader, what are my responsibilities? As a CEO or CXO, right? So each of them have a different role to play, and then plan the cyber strategy, have the cyber strategy at the organization level, and then not just to protect, but actually to respond and react, and then manage the cyber breach, right? I mean, there are only there is no organization or government that can be assured of not having breach. Okay, there are only, people say that there are three types of organizations. One, they know that they have been breached and then they have fixed it, and the ones they know that they are not breached, but they are going to get breached at some point. These two organizations are reasonably prepared well, okay, to handle the cyber breach. But third kind of organizations are there where so they don't know that they are breached. So that is where the big risk is going to be for businesses. And then those are the organizations, the cyber team, the infosec teams, and and IT teams, and the entire organization of this category are going to put their business at almost at jeopardy.
Right. So we talked about three different technology spaces, right? We talked about big data, we talked about AI ML, which is built on top of a lot of data, and then cybersecurity being such an important one. So are these still restricted to the big players out there, the large banks or the large technical companies or so on? How can smaller companies like early stage startups, or how can they leverage these technologies there?
So I think one of the yeah, is it for me? Follow?
Yeah, go ahead, Vishnu.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think go ahead, Jyothish. Okay, I think mixed up.
Okay. So yeah, no, I just wanted to say that maybe some of these technologies are invented by the big companies, right? You've got your Google and Facebook, but eventually, if you look at the big data space itself, right, they donate a lot of the advanced technologies into the Apache Foundation, and they make it open source. They contribute to GitHub, right? And then once it's there, it's open for everybody to use. You bring in a bunch of smart developers who can download this and then start building applications on it. You've got examples, right? HDFS or the Hadoop framework was donated by, I believe, Google. And then you've got Hive query engine donated by Facebook. Then LinkedIn keeps donating. Microsoft donates a lot of stuff to open source, right? So all of this can be used by small companies. You don't need a lot of tons of money or tons of budget to start working on some of these technologies. It's more like a trickle down effect. I agree. Okay, so some of these discoveries might be made in Microsoft, and few years down the lane is when the smaller companies start to get to use it. And I've also seen trends where if you go to the cloud, right, everything is in terms of pay per second, pay per compute power, right? How much CPU that you utilize. So GCP, AWS, all of it boils down the compute to per second, per GB, per MB of data. So it becomes very much possible for smaller companies with smaller budgets to actually experiment, start using it. They don't have to be outside of the big data. They can start using their big data, leverage it in different ways, and use a lot of algorithms packaged that way and available open source. So yeah, definitely it's not just for the big companies, but easily available to small companies also.
Just to add to what Jyothish said, okay, see, some of these open sources, that has been contributed by, big organizations and then, the forums, okay. I think, a lot of it is used, as you said, in startups, okay. This is an opportunity for, building a new product, but it's also, poses a security risk, okay. Because, if you look at, recent major vulnerability of Log4j, right? It's one of the open source that has been, as I don't remember, that particular program being used, at enormous number of a lot of applications, and I don't see any other. I haven't heard such wide adoption of that program before. And one vulnerability in that, you need to modify, patch every application in your enterprise, right? So that's a kind of threat that that can pose. And the good side of it is, right, all these small organizations can subscribe to SaaS based applications, security applications. Like, for example, you want to set up a small office today, and you need network, internet, firewall, IPS, a lot of things, right? And then you need people to manage it, patch it, and all. And now you can subscribe this as a service, right? And you just connect your entire office network to a cloud, and this service is being rendered by the provider. You don't need to manage, you don't need to, so understand, so see the cycle time that you have reduced, okay? Procurement, shipment, customs clearance, lot of things, you can just bring up the network in few days. So I think it has got both sides of it. I think so they will benefit, but also they should be aware of the risks that they are going to have by using open source, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think building, so I think building on top of what both of you said, right? I mean, the straight answer is no. So every company is a technology company now, and they need a technology roadmap that can fuel growth. So if you're a new startup, I would say you should build this and be intentional about it and build it to your roadmap. And when it comes to integrating AI within the central strategy, what businesses should approach, they should approach AI with purpose and intent. So you have to be very thoughtful about it as to what are the use cases where AI can be most effective. And that will be like, if you have that kind of a plan, that's going to make you successful. And adopting AI requires patience and also willingness to learn. So I would say whether you're a big or a small company, you need to begin small, and need to begin now if you've already not begun, and do small pilots, learn from it, and then keep investing in it, and have a very holistic approach towards how you bring in, of course, AI in particular, but overall, right? Your technology has to be inbuilt in your DNA. It cannot be an add-on that you come in and do later.
So that's a very interesting point. We actually have a question from the audience earlier, which is that more than 85% of AI ML projects have been failing, and most of these projects are not getting operationalized. What could be the root causes for this level of failure? So one thing I think you answered it partially is start out with an intent, right? Have the correct intent on what you're trying to solve to have this AI ML model. But what could be other reasons why we are seeing such high rates of failure?
I think the other is, this data, just having the right data set to kind of do your experiments on, as well as having the time to train your algorithm, right? So you have to have the time to do that. It's not like, you automate something, you put something in an algorithm today and you're going to see results tomorrow. The more you use, right, it's that commitment that you have to make. And in another aspect that I always talk about, it is also about, what's the business case, what's the business problem that you're trying to solve through this, right? It's just because you have tech doesn't mean you got to use it. It's about, is it going to solve something? And I feel like, the reason that some of these fail is also because of both the scenario as well as, I would say, three things, right? Scenario, the data, as well as the time and the patience, right? You need that too.
Absolutely. Just to add on to what Meher said, right? Data, absolutely, right? You put trash in, trash out comes out, right? So you need to do a lot of cleanup, and you'll surprisingly find that a data scientist spends 90% of his or her time just cleaning up the data, massaging the data, filling up blank columns, and assuming some data and populating it. And then the remaining 10% is, correct me if I'm wrong, Meher, right? More or less, that's the percentage of how much hard work goes behind all of this before an actual algorithm produces results, right? So data absolutely must. And then you will also find that data scientists, it's still a rare skill out there, right? There's a lot of hype these days, but you will hardly find people more than 10 years of experience in this field. They cannot say I have 15 years of experience, then that's a fake resume, right? So data science is still a very, very niche skill, and you pay tons of money for a data scientist, right? So the cost of the money that you put into some of these projects and then try to make it alive, maybe it doesn't add up. Then another thing I could think of is, are you approaching these data science projects in an agile fashion? Are you iterating in multiple cycles, right? Is it just a big bang approach, or is it multiple smaller agile scrum models that you're trying to iterate and then try to see what is the result? Is it the outcome that I expect to see, and then go forward, right? Some companies don't do that. So they don't have a data strategy in place. There is no governance of data. So a lot of problems actually exist. And another is in terms of the mindset also, right? It should not be like Meher was telling, right? Just because you have a nice predictive, prescriptive algorithm, let's go ahead and use it. That's what the CEO, the CFO, the CTO might be thinking. But we need to take a step back and say, hey, what is the business problem? What is my ROI? What is my return on investment if I build this project? And do I have the foundations to do it? Do I have architects, data engineers? Do I have the data? Do I have the scientists? Do I have the analysts? Can I build an end-to-end solution? And then can I deliver, right? So these are some of the problems that I see that causes some of these projects to fail most of the times.
Yeah, absolutely. And trash in, trash out, the most ubiquitous problem ever, because you don't spend enough time planning for it. You build your models on trash, and then you're surprised when the result comes out to be absolutely trash again. So on the same note, Jyothish, you brought up a very interesting thing. To have the right quality of data, is it just enough to have a good structure in place, or do you need to have a lot of data first to be able to come to, clean that up and come to a cleaner set of, or a high quality set of data? So if so, how are organizations managing this storage? Because we talked about data warehouses, data lakes, and I don't know what, maybe data oceans will come up next. So how are organizations managing big data?
So yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Prathyush, because data lake and all of that is now evolving into data swamp, right? So much data, it's all bad data. Okay, nobody knows the lineage. Where is this data coming from? If you open one data lake and see you've got name of the customer, there are 10 such fields, all of them name of the customer. Now, which name is the actual name of the customer? Which one should I pick? Nobody knows, because nobody has built a lineage. So very important to put a data strategy first, then put a data governance in place, and then build lineage, then put data quality. And once you have all this basic framework in place, right? And then you start collecting tons of data, because otherwise very soon I've seen organizations struggle with the amount of data they have. They can boast of terabytes and petabytes of data, but they can't derive AI/ML, intelligence.
No meaningful results out of it as well, right?
Yeah.
No, totally. That's a very, very interesting point. So let's switch gears a bit, right? So let's talk about in the whole technology space, the type of challenges that leaders face today, right? And when we talk about challenges in the now, we cannot not talk about the pandemic. It has disrupted nearly every industry in the world. Every organization has faced some sort of a challenge or the other. But it also gave a lot of growth opportunities for them. There's some companies which have basically prospered during the last 2 years. And Meher, I think let's talk about Microsoft for a minute, right? It's seen phenomenal growth over the past 2 years. And the mission of Microsoft is to enable every organization and person to deliver more. So how can you tell us more about how Microsoft is playing a role in transforming businesses globally?
Sure. Thanks, Prathyush, for that question. So as the world continues to respond to COVID-19, I think, Microsoft has played a very important role. And again, I'll come to the business part of it, but there is a role that I feel we played, which is about how do we ensure, we are providing the support to the communities, right? So we have kind of, whether it is helping in the relief efforts, whether it is helping in, medical assistance and research. I mean, the AI for health has enabled frontline workers. We've also done a lot around to job seekers, right? Which is around how do we bring the in-demand digital skills, and how do we make that available to millions of people in the world? And we have done it through, and we continue to do that, right? Through LinkedIn, GitHub, and other platforms. I think the one area that I think we fundamentally disrupted is working, right? Which is, how do we enable remote working overnight? And you've heard all these terms of, we were able to enable 2 years worth of transformation within 2 months. And, again, who would have thought that, healthcare would be delivered remotely, right? And now I think the future is such that, your first experience when it comes to health is now a telepresence experience or a telemedicine experience, and then you want to go to a doctor, right? So when I look back, I think the disruption for us happened in the whole remote working space, whether it was about how employees were connected to their organization, or how companies were connecting with their customers, how companies were actually doing work, right? So we were able to make an impact all over there. Online education is another space that comes to mind around how we, around an area we had an impact. E-commerce, I mean, you name it. I think across the board, we were able to make an impact. And I think we take that, it's both a very, very humbling moment, right? Because when I think we saw our mission really come to life through this pandemic, where we were able to actually enable, and continue to every person and every organization on this planet to achieve more.
Right. So to a follow-up question, Meher, would be, now when we look at this globally, do we see a trend on how this technology-driven transformation has happened? Do we see that more towards the developing nations and less towards countries which are already developed because they've already done the transformation pre-pandemic?
See, transformation is ever evolving, right? So it's like, depending on what stage you are in, it kind of has an impact. And I would say we are seeing here again, right? We are seeing signals that are across the board, right? So companies that have already transformed to some extent are transforming even more, right? And see, the first stage of a lot of this, we use the word transform very loosely, right? Actually, the first stage or few stages of transformation have actually been around, digitization. So you took something that was, a process or something that was manual or manual intensive, and you automated it. All of us, right? We call that transformation. For me, transformation is more about where you're actually, really disrupting something, right? And whenever I talk transformation, I always take the example of, again, Airbnb and Uber, because they really came in transform, because they really brought in business models that didn't exist, right? So now, I mean, the pandemic is also kind of forcing us to look at things and reinvent, right? And one of the areas that is ripe for reinvention is how we work, right? How employee experience per se, right? That is again an area that is very, very, I would say, very ripe for disruption, or it's already disrupting, right? Because see, in the past, when we used to think about employee experience, what was it like, right? I mean, it was all interactions that were happening in person, in a setup, in your work. Now, there is a whole digital category to it, right? And maybe there is a hybrid category to it. So, just name it, right? I mean, I can go on with other areas, but I would say it's across. I think the direct answer would be it's across the board, right? And every area is very, very ripe for disruption.
Sure. Yeah. You brought up something very interesting, is about how we are working and what the pandemic did, right? You talked about hybrid work, and I think we'll come to this question in a bit because I really want to hear some more thoughts on how do we envision the future of work. But before that, right, let's focus on India first. We talked about overall change globally, but in India, there is so much going on. The pandemic took its toll, but at the same time, we saw a huge growth in the number of startups. And I think 2021, we had a record number of unicorns. And at the same time, we see a huge increase in cybercrime and issues with cybersecurity. And as Vishnu called out, I have a feeling there are so many companies in the third bucket which do not even realize that they've been hacked, right? And I mean, there's one statistic which says there's a 2000% increase in cybercrimes in 2021. And at the same time, India, there's another factor, which is the government. And the government has a big role to play. There's a data protection law we are expecting very soon, which is going to have a big impact, I believe. And we've recently launched the digital rupee. There's a lot of digital initiatives in the budget. So I want to hear the panel's thoughts on how can leaders and organizations in India deal with these challenges?
I think the first and foremost thing is raising the cyber awareness across employees of the organization, and also as a citizens, right? Generally we give very less importance on the privacy. So a lot of people we give our mobile numbers and an email IDs, and you just enter for small draws and everything, right? So I think that's all data, individual personal data, right? And then that gets shared across. So the data privacy and localization, I think, is every country is taking, and India is no different. And I think being little late starter, so we will have our own learnings, and we can probably fix some of the challenges that are there with already countries where they have already enacted the laws, right? And then second dimension is so what is what changed during the pandemic, and then what is the current situation now at this point of time. I think we never have seen this kind of pandemic coming in and working from home so many years, right? For 2 years, we were just, first of all, we haven't seen it and we are not prepared for it. All the security controls were, designed, implemented for enterprise setup where people can come in and then work from there. And some of the COE center of excellences, and then labs, where you don't have dev and test environments, you don't have much controls as well. And now all of that you will be accessing from remotely, and you have to make this happen within few days. And some of the employees were using shared assets, and then some of them were on laptops, some of them were on desktop. So a lot of organizations allowed use of personal laptops, assets without much security controls, right? And this all opened up, doors, back doors, and a lot of holes in the security implementation, and then which actually raised the incidents. Okay, I think subsequently what happened was many of the enterprises have ensured that they get their personal device, and also the security controls were actually moved from enterprise level adoption to a endpoint adoption. So a lot of it, like firewalling, content filtering, and which were actually deployed at enterprise level, is now actually sitting on our laptops now, right? So that way, I think the posture has improved a lot and the risks have come down a lot. But that's only up to some extent, right? For example, when you look at data breach, there are unconventional ways of collecting data when you are operating at home, which you typically is not possible when you are in a surveillance or in a controlled environment in office. Okay, I think those issues or risks are still existing, but I think cyber posture definitely largely improved a lot.
Sure. Thanks, Vishnu. Meher, Jyothish, any thoughts on this? And there's one other question I see on chat, which is, we'll appreciate any insights from panelists on ethics and law as applicable to data science and AI.
Yeah, that's
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jyothish.
So I was just saying that's still a gray area, right? And there's been a lot of debates around it, right? But eventually what I believe will be enacted will be laws, right? We will have laws which says that this is what you have to do. If you have a situation where autonomous cars, right? They are coming all the more in the prominent, in the spotlights. When you are driving an autonomous car, the car, should it decide to kill the passenger or a small kid on the road, right? Now the car has to take a split-second decision. If it brakes too fast, the car is just going to burst and the driver is going to die. If it doesn't brake too fast, the boy or girl on the road is going to die, right? So all of those such ethical nuances is still a gray area, has to be ironed out using coded laws, which can define more clearly what should be incorporated into some of these algorithms. Yeah, but that's still into the future.
Meher, you want to add on? Meher, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I actually can hear you now, but I didn't hear what you said before.
No, I said you had a point. Can you wanted to add on?
I think Jyothish covered it, right? I think we have to mature there, and I think what's really required is set of principles, processes around it, so that we can actually leverage all this. See, at the end of the day, all this technology is for the good, right? And how do we ensure that we are doing whatever we are doing is for the good of the society around us?
True. I think Jyothish, you brought up a very interesting point that it's a gray area. There's a lot of work going on at the same time. There is so much investment which some of these big tech companies are doing in this space without having any laws or any regulations in place. So I think to answer the question, to take it a step further, is in the next 5 years, if we talk about it, I think all of these are going to fall in place. And that's when governments, I think we spoke about data protection laws, we have GDPR, we have the California law, and India and every other country is trying to step in with just data privacy. And that's a problem which has been there for the past 5 years. We've been collecting user data for past 5 years, and now we are coming up with the laws to protect users. Now, when it comes to AI, I think it will be the exact same cycle. Technology will lead, it will come out with solutions, and then regulations will probably come to understand what these technical companies are doing. And then probably, I'm thinking maybe 5-10 years down the line, we might have the required laws and regulations in place. So on the same note, so if we start looking at what is changing, there's so much changing in technology today, right? So what can we expect in the next 5 years? So this is a question I want to hear from all the panelists. And most importantly, how can leaders, now we have so many people on in the audience as well, how can we as leaders be prepared for this so that we can ensure there's no negative impact and we are able to leverage this upcoming technology for better business?
I don't know who wants to go first on this one.
Yeah, I can take a stab at it. So what's in the next 5 years, right? Even though my name is Jyothish and I'm supposed to be an astrologer predicting the future, I'm not gonna try and do that. But if you look at Gartner's hype cycle, right? They keep publishing this technological advances and the Gartner hype chart every 6 months or once a year. If you look at that, you will see some of these technologies peaking at the hype and then coming down to a more usable, stable mode, right? And that's when some of these technologies are going to be usable for everybody to be out there in the society, right? So keep looking at that. That's one source of great information. And they keep publishing this for general in technology, industry wide. So you will see a lot of different hype curve. But I would say next 5 years, I'm betting big time that blockchain is going to come mainstream, right? When you say blockchain, people usually have a negative connotation and they say, oh, Bitcoin and scam and fraudsters and pranksters. No. Look at the core technology. What does it mean? What is this ledger technology? And how is it going to propel the future? That's going to come up. That's going to be mainstream. That's going to come up in a big way. You're going to create entire world around it. Metaverse. Most of you must have heard the term metaverse being thrown around. And metaverse will consist of AR, VR, some of the haptic feedback devices. You'll have NFTs, non-fungible tokens, playing a big role. Somebody just put in a question around Web3. Web3 will become a reality, right? And all of this is going to be based on the blockchain. That's going to serve as the fundamental, where you have a lot of decentralization. You will see a lot of power now being concentrated with a central authority, and that will become more decentralized, more distributed. And I think that's the way we are going to go. And then I've seen also some companies where I work, like in GE, right? I've seen GE evolve the digital twin. So what is a digital twin? It's all about putting small IoT devices in your machines, right? You've got a factory, you've got windmill turbine, you've got aeroplane engines. You put small devices that give away or stream real-time data into the data lakes, right? And then you do predictive algorithms on top of it and say 24 hours before something happens, these algorithms are able to predict that wind turbine is going to fail in the next 2 to 3 days. You better go and replace it now if you don't want any downtime. Okay, that aeroplane engine needs the maintenance right away, so you don't have to ground it. Things like that. I've seen Philips evolve a little bit of the digital twin in the medical space, right? So they are thinking of nanobots. You must have seen in movies, but it's very close to becoming reality because they are experimenting with things that you can send into your body, and from within the body it sends out data of your body out into a data lake where you apply AI/ML, and then you analyze it, and then you do a full body checkup and all the analysis and predictive and all of that stuff. So very exciting next 5 years, I would say. Yeah.
I
to
love that
build
concept
on
of
this.
nanobots. So yeah, so I'm just thinking that, if we had nanobots today, which could have detected if you had COVID or not, and they're able to in real time update, I think the pandemic would have ended maybe just in a month or maybe even lesser. Right. So yeah, I wish we will have technology like that coming up pretty soon, so that that's going to ensure that there'll be no more pandemics in the future.
Exactly. Or or we are in a state where we can handle it better, right? So hopefully that will happen. So I think I'll just kind of, Jyothish touched on metaverse, right? And that's something that, it seems like it's super exciting, view of the future, right? Where where both the real world is going to get immersed in a virtual world and vice versa. So we'll be able to build these real presence and very immersive presences. So like for instance, what would happen is something like today, instead of this being like tiles that you see of us, this would actually be either a digital avatars or a holograms in a virtualized space having this conversation, right? So it's also not also like, if you look at it, it's not about viewing your devices, right? So when on the shop floor you will on the plant, you can actually be there and work on it. So see, that is going to just give us tremendous opportunities to innovate, to actually come up with newer ways of doing things. So I think there's you can there's so much that's out there, right? And it'll be very interesting to see how each of these technologies just evolve in the next 5 years.
From cyber, I think in point of view, there will be a lot of breaches as we are seeing last 2 years. It will continue the trend.
Higher predictions from Vishnu.
Right. So then, so which basically means that there is going to be a lot of demand for cyber skills and services in the marketplace, and so countries are going to use this as a power tool to twist or get their interest addressed. Like so recently we have seen in case of Russia-Ukraine scenario, many of the sites of Ukraine and then applications and then enterprises were targeted and then breached actually. So I think so this is going to continue, and from the enterprise point of view, the leaders and the most of the employees and then so the awareness is going to be increasing a lot, and the model of cyber programs are going to change from protection to resiliency, because they understand that they cannot be protected all the time, and they know that they are going to get breached at some point of time, and then they'll be preparing themselves to recover when there is a breach much faster than what they can do today. And today many organizations struggle to bring back business to normalcy, and it takes anywhere between few weeks to months in some cases. So if that happens for, let's say, in utility companies, you can imagine what can happen, right? So, and another thing that will happen is there is an opportunity for insurers. So most of the enterprises have to insure their cyber risks. They have to model their cyber risks and then appropriately cover and protect themselves from the risk management point of view.
That is, Vishnu, we'd love to hear some more thoughts on that. Even you said insurance, right? So today, I think at Max, companies do fire insurance or maybe earthquake insurance, but these are really cyber threat insurances. Can you tell us more about this space?
So it is evolving at this point of time, Prathyush. So the models are very in a nascent stage, but there are providers and then who are underwriting that, but it needs to be customized, and then we have to work it through. So basically, see, you can't, again, you have to customize the risk profile, right? I mean, you can't say that you want to protect your revenues, or you want to cover the bottom line, or you want to underwrite the contract that you signed with your customer if you are a service provider. So there are different scenarios. All of the scenarios can be, an opportunity for insurers, and then, enterprise have to, probably look into all those risk management. You have to incorporate your cyber risks, and model them, what you want to address, and then, appropriately cover.
So from what I see, right, so this trend of working from home, this hybrid, I think is going to continue because there are so many people who are seeing value from it. And when we look at technology, all this thing being developed right now, I think as leaders, one important responsibility is to create the right work culture, right? So, and considering there's so much changing, how do we envision the future of work? I think, Meher, we talked about it, so I'll pose this question to you. So how is technology playing a role in this? And then what sort of future can we expect for work in general?
This is an area that I'm, again, another area that I'm very fascinated about is the future of work. So the future of work is hybrid, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious now. And when we talk about hybrid, right, I mean, we also talk about this hybrid paradox, right? So we kind of polled employees, and there's a lot of data that tells that, about 70% of the employees want flexibility, right? And 70% of the employees want human connection. So now you have to have both. You have to have, we want human, we want flexibility and we want human connection. So to facilitate this kind of a future, we'll have to equip ourselves with new ways of working and new ways of like communication as well as collaboration. And from a technology perspective, we will have to have some kind of a digital fabric in the workplace that can and we have to also think about communication and differentiate between synchronous and asynchronous communication. What we tend to do, the way we work most of the time, we do a lot of more of asynchronous and less of more of synchronous and less of asynchronous communication. So we'll have to kind of figure that out. Even the in-person and remote experiences, that also have to be kind of dealt with, right? What I mean by that is, see, in the past, in the pre-pandemic, the remote experience was not the primary experience, right? So people would always meet in a setup. And let's say if you're on a different time zone or something, you would be the one person who's dialing from outside. And we all have been, and especially people who are in tech and who are in this part of the world, know what that experience looked like. The pandemic just, it kind of made it level playing where everybody was on a call like you, right? So that participation also has to, the remote participation has to be the participation. It cannot be like the second class participation. See, another thing that we have learned around work is, there's this strong link and weak link, right? What do we mean by strong link? Strong link is, the link that we have. Let's say if we are part of one team, we working together, that's a strong link. Even during this all of remote working, the strong link has become stronger. However, the weak link is the linkages that we form when we are in the hallways, we are in the cafeterias, we are talking, and that's where a lot of the innovation happens, right? Because you're bouncing off things that has weakened, right? So in the future of work, we have to find ways to strengthen these weak links, right? And we have to also build that connective tissue that's there between managers and employees. So the role of the manager in this future is just like, it's super, super important. And the manager themselves are also navigating this, right? It's like, it's not like the managers know what's
and nobody came prepared, right?
Nobody came prepared. And the managers had this very tough task of managing the change themselves and managing the workforce. So culture will become important or is important, and the culture has to be grounded on inclusion. The culture has to be grounded on empathy. I mean, never before have we expected managers to show empathy, right? I mean, when we kind of went through the harrowing wave 2, I mean, the only thing managers did was, just kind of be there for their employees. So, that's in the future, and even now, right? I keep saying future, then I correct myself that even right now, right? the role of the manager is very important in shaping the culture, and technology has to kind of create these very, very immersive experiences so that, there are nudges, right? So somebody should be able to, I mean, I wish, and we don't have it, and I know we are working on some of these scenarios, is how do we have these nudges that can tell an employee manager that, hey, you haven't met so and so for so many days or weeks. Why don't you set up a one-on-one, right? Or for that matter, right, in the moment, right, I run into, like, if there is a way to have these what I call, the drop-in conversation. So, two people are discussing something and you happen to walk by and you suddenly start ideating. We need to create that experience in the digital world too, right? So there's a lot that has to happen, and you said it right. Culture is going to be very important. They say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's going to eat it. It'll take a much, much bigger bite now. So the focus has to be there.
Love those thoughts, Meher. The strengthening the weak links. I think I'm actually hearing this for the first time, but I love the way that you put it and divided this into two specific areas. And I do agree. I think the weak link is what everyone is missing today. The water cooler discussions, the catch up over coffee, or or the sutta break that many people go on. So these are things I think are badly being missed. I agree there. So we talked about technology. There's so many changes which are coming in, and also we talked about what the future of work would be and how managers need to move towards there, right? So I think a critical question here, which is going to be relevant to all of us, is what skills are required? What skills would be relevant for next generation leaders in technology and basically to deal with this future of work?
I can take a stab, and I'm sure all of us have insights here, right? First and foremost, it's about leading in this world, right? So, which is, I think one skill would be communication. How are you able to communicate with people? Not just, see, some of us are great in-person communications. Others are great in like written communication. But here you have to communicate and build connections in this world, in this kind of a setup, right? So, it is that there is this, you need a lot of empathy. You need clarity of thought, right? How do you create clarity and just get to what is it that you're trying to do at a particular time? Because time is also of essence here. And then prioritization. I think learning how to prioritize, and ruthless prioritization, because you have to do more with less all the time.
Yeah, I completely agree with the empathy part over there, Meher. Especially in these times, right? A lot of empathy is needed. If you don't have it, we somehow have to build those skills, right? Because if you think about it, right, as managers, and when you sit down to think about it, when I set up some of these calls, Zoom calls with my team, right, I am going into their bedrooms and living rooms, and I am there. I am invading their private space, right? And that's how I see it. So I put my own restrictions saying that, hey, I'm not going to call somebody beyond a certain time, and things like that, right? And it's more important during the pandemic times. Another thing that in terms of skills is to keep an open mind. Technology is always coming in, right? There's a lot of things happening. So as leaders, keep an open mind. Don't just dissuade anybody, or don't throw away any technology thinking, hey, it's too far-fetched or unrealistic. Keep an open mind, encourage teams to build on it, evolve around it, experiment with it, play around with it, right? And I remember in GE, right, when I was working in GE 6 years ago. So GE has got this special units that work on cutting edge technology, right? So they bought in this device that you can put on your brain, on your head, and it can read signals from your brain. Okay, it can read only about 12 signals. There's a company, I forget the name of the company, but based on that, just by thinking, you can move a drone up, down, left, right. So you think up in your mind, this device reads, it transmits it to the drone and makes it happen, right? And it's used actually in real life where people have disability, when they are completely, they cannot walk, they're on a wheelchair, only their brain functions. People think and move their wheelchair, and that's happening in some pockets. But at that time when I saw this, I was thinking, oh my God, this is too far-fetched. Nobody's going to use it, right? But just keep an open mind of all the technology that's happening there. Blockchains, NFTs, metaverse, Web3, a lot of jargons you'll see along the way. Some of them might not pan out the way we intended to, but keeping an open mind is very important.
One important phenomena, my experience, I'll tell you guys. So, a lot of us now are, in video, right? So the organization where I was working before pandemic, we were almost like 80 to 90% we were on video calls, okay? And that is how we equipped, people and, as an enterprise, the conference rooms and everything. But because now we are, actually, working from home, the ambience could be different and all. More, subsequently, when we started working from home, many of them became audio calls. So, it's so different. The people who got used to, video calls for 10 years, suddenly, people started talking over each other and, so not being able to have a sync in communication, right? I think the two attributes I just want to add what, both of them, have said on the communication. One is the context need to be, clearly communicated, and then the timing of the communication has to be, very appropriate. Okay. And third attribute that probably, we would be, more wanting to is, transparency, right? So, in an office, setting, in a meeting, so a lot of things are read through the, body language, so you are missing that, either, from team being, interpreting the, body language of the, manager or leader, and then vice versa. That opportunity is lost now, right? It's just about face feelings and all. Anyway, we are not all actors like, all the movies that we have, right? So we miss out a lot of things. That reading, subtle readings is not possible. So it's important, being timely, having timely, contextual and transparent communication, to the peers, to the team, and, to the leaders.
Yep, totally. Empathy. I'm looking at the key insights, basically empathy and having an open mind and having the right communication strategy. Really, really great inputs for all of us. And I was just thinking, Jyothish, when you mentioned invasion of privacy and you are into bedrooms of everybody else, I think the only thing that's stopping people is basically a thin virtual background behind you. And we have no idea what's happening behind that. And so keeping of this open mind, I totally agree with that, because
absolutely.
we are able to see some really interesting trends. One thing, as Vishnu pointed out, how audio calls went up when we would normally assume that video calls will continue to be at 80-90% as you had before. Similarly, there are some very interesting trends that you think that people staying at home would not care too much about their appearance, but there's a recent trend I was reading about which said the number of plastic surgeries have shot up. Plastic surgeons are not able to deal with the demand when everyone is sitting at home. So these are very, very counterintuitive trends which should happen. But I think being able to empathize with what people are going through and keeping an open mind, both of these really would help you understand when you see these trends and be better prepared for them. Right? Brilliant thoughts, really useful tips for every leader to consider. We are at 6 o'clock, so I just want to switch gears, take a step back, right, and talk about all of your PGPMAX alums. So I want to understand, how was your PGPMAX journey? What skills did you learn, and how did it play a role in your leadership journey so far? I can start with you, Meher. You are the founding member, so you can be the first to answer this.
Sure. So, I mean, again, there are plethora of things that I can go on and speak about, right? See, I think what PGPMAX did for me was, first and foremost, it just kind of, brought me into this learning mindset. And, I mean, again, all of you who have gone through it or going through it know that, you just don't have enough time within a day to kind of do both, right? So you have to be so planful about everything. So it taught me how to prioritize, how to manage my time. And that stayed for a very long time. But I will say, of course, then bad habits start creeping in later. That you just I do while away a lot of time on social media and all of that. But for a very long time after PGPMAX, I mean, I think that learning spirit was there with me. the thing that I cherish the most, and I wouldn't have said this when I was graduating, is the cohort, right? The group of friends that I made, my that group, right? I reach out to that group. That's the first line of defense for me. Whether it is work, not work, pandemic. I mean, through the pandemic, I think we became even more closer. So that's, and the third thing I would say is just the network that PGPMAX provided, right? Which is with the professors, with the school, with other events like these. I think all of that is just kind of it's so invaluable. It's priceless.
Definitely, yeah.
I think for me, it's like, so I've been, more of a domain expert in some of the few service lines and all. But, this gave me, the course gave me, a lot of, context of the business, how not only business, right, how the social, I mean, we also have, some of the topics on ethics, social evolvement, psychology and all, right? I mean, and then how economy runs, not just, and then finance works, and then, how do you price and a lot of, so it basically, changing me as a person. Okay. And, and then, whenever I now, look at anything, so I have a more broader view and perspective of, things, and which is actually, increase my risk appetite. Okay. Right. And also, because you have a clear understanding, and then, or at least you think there is a clear understanding, at least better than what you had in the past. So, and then you also have stomach for taking, that knocks. I mean, I felt a couple of times to quit job and start, so it did not materialize good, one way, because pandemic, I would not have met my customers anyway, right? Last 2 years, I would not have got an appointment. But I think that courage to, experiment, and then, thinking about it, okay, if it fails, it fails, then, you have an alternate option, you can explore, and then, take it from there. Okay. I think that's the biggest, change. And yeah, I mean, as Mayor said, cohort, so I was just, going through one of the decision on changing the, job in this last week. And then today morning, I called one of our cohort to understand, what are the schooling options, right? I mean, so much personal things, right? I mean, he has actually promised to, go around and research apart from what he knows, right? And then help me, what is the right decision to make. I mean, what else you need, so, apart from whatever professional career relationship we have. So that's, one of the good network without much expectations that, unlike, in office workspace, you have expectations, and then people around you have expectations about you, whether it is peers or, whether, or in this network, in this cohort and network, right? I think a lot of people are really there out to help you, if you are having any need. I think it's a biggest asset.
Yeah, completely agree with Meher and Vishnu there. So a lot of learning, amazing cohort, peer network. It's all very good. For me, one other thing was in terms of the branding itself, right? The ISB brand itself added value. And it almost felt as if a glass ceiling was broken. And now I have the upper echelons of the management open up for me. So you could think of it as a second shot of my career. And then I'm able to pursue that runway is absolutely a great thing. Yeah.
Awesome. Really interesting to know.
Be more receptive. Yeah, people will be more receptive to your ideas and thoughts, so they want to, hear about your viewpoint on any topic. So, right, that is where, it keeps opening up a lot of opportunities.
Really good to know. Thank you for sharing, Meher, Vishnu, Jyothish. This is really, really interesting to hear, all the way from 10, 11 years ago, from when Meher graduated till very recently. So it's really good to know that the cohort, the network, and the new perceptions or new doors that get opened for you still continue to do so. So thank you for sharing that. We're at 6:10. So I think what I'll do is we can take up a few of the questions, starting with what has been asked earlier. One of them is, how do we use AR, VR effectively for the sales force? I think we talked about frontline workers and how they can be empowered. So this is a very interesting question. How, especially if they don't have access to company LAN or other equipment, how do we effectively empower the sales force?
So I think it will. So AR and VR is still developing and evolving, right, as we speak. You know that Facebook renamed itself as the Meta, and meaning the metaverse, and they're spending a lot of money on building. Not just Microsoft is also doing that, right? Facebook, a lot of people are doing that, and you must have heard of Decentraland, Sandbox. All of those are blockchain-based projects that's building virtual worlds. And if you keep up to date with some of these news, you will hear about people purchasing land in all these places, decentralized a blockchain world. People are setting up buildings. People are exhibiting things over there. I read about 2 weeks back about an Indian guy actually spent about $135,000, bought a piece of land in a New York street. It's all virtual, okay? It's not a real place. It's all virtual place. And he set up a small museum and he's exhibiting his artwork over there. I was like, wow, I can go to his museum and see the art just by sitting at home, put on my AR, VR set, and then go and explore. Similarly, big names are taking up space in the virtual world. And that's where I imagine at some point, many companies are going to open shop in some of these virtual worlds, right? But then right now, how the space is evolving is there are so many different virtual worlds. Everybody's building their own virtual world. And I would imagine at some point there'll be bridges to cross connect these virtual worlds. And then you navigate between these virtual worlds and all of that stuff is happening. So yeah.
Thanks, Jyothish. We have a couple of questions around the cybersecurity related challenges, especially related to the digital rupee that's getting introduced. So Vishnu, would you like to take that? And there's another question around the cyber attacks on energy infrastructure. I think you spoke about this, that public utility, they are the biggest sector. And if they get affected, the impact will be, we can't even imagine how to recover from that. So 2 questions, mostly around cybersecurity.
Sure. So I think, I will take first question more from economics point of view and regulation point of view than the technology problem per se, right? So I think we have all, learned about cigarettes being used in, Second World Wars, containment zones, right? So I think currency is a tool, just for exchange of, goods and services to get paid, okay? So, digital currencies and cryptocurrencies for that matter, right? Cryptocurrencies, I think there is no regulation or very little regulation. And see, where does governments draw power, right? It is from the legislation, currency, military, okay, right, and then police, whatever, and then subsequently, so now that's a monopoly. And so you think RBI or any central banks are going to, lose that? I don't think so. That is one. Second thing is, so we have these exchange rates between different countries, that is attached to, your economic performance of the country, right? So digital currencies does not have any link to your, economic performance. So how do you connect with, this cryptocurrencies, right? So it's difficult. And then traceability in case of crime and other things. So I think, so what is going to happen is, I think, is there is a need for digital currency and there is a technology to support that, okay, which was not the case in the past, which can, solve some of the, problems like counterfeit currencies and all, right? So I think every central bank will build their own digital currency and they will link it with, the economic performance of the country. And so that, the exchange rates can be, at a worldwide can be managed in a systematic manner. Yeah, I think, that can be used, right? I think that's my view. And I think this was, when we are going through our trainings, our course in ISB, so it so happened that, Rajan, Dr. Rajan was in our campus, and then we asked for a small interaction, and this was one of the more prominent question for him, right? And even to our economics professor. So I think by and large, at least from our group, after the response from them, so they have not invested in cryptocurrencies. And even if you go back 2 days back, our RBI governor's statement on cryptocurrencies, I think cryptocurrencies will not have much life, and maybe 1 or 2 may survive because of the technology they have and then the monopoly they may build. But I think digital currencies across the world will get built by central banks, and then can be used with regular regulations, and then interconnected world, in the interconnected world.
Thanks, Vishnu. You want to take the second question as well, the cybersecurity for energy infrastructure?
Evolving, and there are many business benefits in using IoT in all utility companies, be it gas and electricity or water or anything. And typically their networks are different, and then so with 5G evolving, right? And then so I'm sure the security need to be embedded into the the communication network and the protocols itself. But that's definitely is an opportunity and threat for the human race, in terms of who controls and then how secure they are, and that's an opportunity for us as technology leaders to see how we can solve that problem.
True, definitely an opportunity, I think. And as the number of devices keep going up, I think your predictions of the number of cyber threats is also going to continue to increase. I think we'll take one final question, because I promised Smriti we'll leave some time for questions on PGPMAX. So one question is, what are the safeguards against tech being misused or being a source of problem for new clients who choose to risk and accept adding these things to their lives? It's, I think, more of a philosophical questions on what sort of safeguards can be put, because there's so much of tech evolving today. And we talked about laws and regulations coming a bit later. But what can customers who are accepting these technologies, what sort of safeguards can they take today?
I think, and again, I would say Vishnu touched upon it a lot. So it's about, all of this, and security goes hand in hand. So you can't have advancement in technologies and not secure an environment, right? So, the threat landscape just goes, explodes with, whether you're writing, IoT devices out there, and you name it. So it's about, how do you have a holistic approach to it around how you secure your environment? How do you have controls so that you can detect intrusions? I think that is very, very important. So that of it, right? I think that is, you have to focus on that. So build a very holistic strategy around I keep saying technology roadmap, right? That's important, because when you do that, you will take care of security. You will take care of compliance, because with security, compliance and security also goes hand in hand. I know it's a philosophical answer again, but then that's all I can say right now.
And just to add on, I also see a lot of pushback, right? I see people pushing back against some of these big companies, right? I open the paper every day. I keep reading Google is fighting a case in Europe. Facebook is fighting it in Australia. People are saying, don't use my data. If you're using my data, let me know. Accept all cookies. You need to show that message, right? So initially, if you think about it, 10 years ago, cookies would automatically be landed on our devices and we wouldn't even know. Now you see some of these web pages saying accept or not accept cookies. Can I put cookies in here? And then recently I read an article which says that, hey, you're using my data. Now you need to pay me for using my data, right? People are saying that they're fighting back against some of this big tech and saying that I need control of my data. You have to respect my privacy. And there is a lot of discussion around it. Things are still evolving. But at some point, I believe that we will be able to fend some of these huge companies and tell them that, hey, this is how you can operate. You're too big now and you're killing competition. You're not following some of the ethical practices and standards, and people will fight back against some of these huge companies. It's the trend that I'm seeing, but let's see how it evolves.
But I would also say that, all the large companies have the controls to actually honor these preferences, right? Programs are there, checks and balances are there to ensure that, customer, whatever it is, right, data is not being misused or it's not being used in an intent that it was not collected for, right? And to I mean, the amount of awareness large organizations have around that, they're they're sensitive about it. And, I mean, there's tons and tons of training that goes on just to get the employees aware so that they don't even do it inadvertently.
True.
See, again, so right, the controls regulations is always, it's after industry evolves, you will get that, right? Because in the nascent stage, you don't understand the risks, and first of all, the usability and, all those things, right? So people experience it, understand. See, for example, we all wear a lot of wearables like, smartwatch and all. And then, your vitals are all being collected now. Where is it stored? It's all in the cloud, in the hands of the wearables, the company of the wearable supplier, right? So they have the data, just not about, your name, your, date of birth, or, your other regulatory license numbers and all, right? It's more than that. So they know about your health, they know about your moods, a lot of things. So I think all that, I think, is definitely not regulated, but I think, is slowly that sense of, legislations will happen across the world, and, different countries will have. And I think every country is going towards data localization. They realize not now that, so, see, if you look at it, most of the data is concentrated in US across the globe, right? And then maybe some countries in Europe. So, but I think as the legislations happen, I think, a lot of localization will happen. And I think as we are coming close towards the session, maybe one request, so one warning or request, right? Watch what you are browsing and then what you are clicking. Okay, so what you are clicking, maybe what you are pursuing to be clicking is maybe different than what you thought. Okay, so that is where you will get a malicious code, and then from there it spreads.
But you would agree, Vishnu, right? The control is with you. The power is with you to do. So it's nobody is asking us to do it, right?
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, so on that dire note, I think, folks, we can conclude today. So, all right, folks, this has been a great session. So we've touched upon so many interesting points and got some fantastic insights from our panelists. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. And Meher, Jyothish, Vishnu, thank you for your time and providing us with these thoughts on such diverse topics. And over to you, Smriti, for taking up any questions on the program. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Prathyush. You were an awesome host. You got the insights out so well. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fine. Thank you, host, and other panelists and Smriti and team. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prathyush, for hosting the session, and Vishnu, Meher, and Jyothish, you were superb. Thank you. So, audience, Thomas and I are here in case you have any questions about the program. We can hang around a bit and clarify your doubts while Vishnu, Meher, and Jyothish and Prathyush can carry on.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. Since we are running out of time, we'll be posting the link for the one-to-one where you can have a one-to-one info session with us as well. So we'll be hosting it right now in the chat box. Should you have any questions right now, please feel free to share it in the Q&A box and we'll be happy to take it up. Otherwise, please do connect with us for a one-to-one and we'll be happy to discuss the program or your profile in detail. Sharing this in the chat box right now. Right, so the link shared in the chat box right now gives you the opportunity to book a one-to-one with either me or Smriti, and we'll be happy to get in touch with you to discuss the program and the related information in detail. That said, we've got a question on the course fee. Yes, the course fee is a substantial investment, but please also do look at the program and compare it with the competitors and the pricing of similar programs across the world. And you would see that ISP's PGPMAX is one of the most competitively priced programs. Right, so that's it. Please get in touch with us should you have any questions, and we'll be happy to discuss it with you on a one-to-one basis. Right now, if there are no further questions, we'll wind up the session. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a very nice weekend ahead. There is a question on the recording for this session. So we will share the recording over email. Please look forward to an email from our end. We will be sharing the link with you on this.